So we are going to move along in science. And today we are really going to determine the differences between living and non-living things. Now I know that that seems super basic. You're like, Mrs. Masachi, I already know the difference. But bear with me. We're going to go through the lesson, and then I want you to go outside today, and I want you to make a list. It's in your lesson plans. You are going to go outside and record a list of 5 living things and 5 non-living things that you observe. So you can either do it in a chart like this where you write them down, or you can take pictures. I don't care how you do it. Just make sure you've labeled it if you take pictures where you're telling me that this is living and this is non-living. So before we go on, I want you to watch this lesson with me, okay? So if we're looking at this picture right here, do you think that this picture shows a living thing or a non-living thing? And why? I see trees, so I think that's living. I think snow. Is that living or is that non-living? We're going to get into some of the ways that you can determine if a thing is living or non-living. What about this picture? See a bunch of rocks. Are those living or are those non-living? And why? What about this tiger? Is that a living thing or a non-living thing? And then finally, an airplane. Is that a living thing or a non-living thing? I'm sure you guys have gotten all of the answers right as we went through this, but let's see how we know for sure. So I don't need to read all that stuff to you guys. So we know that a living thing is going to eat. It can reproduce, which means that it can have other babies or smaller things like it. It drinks, it moves, it breathes, it can go to the bathroom, and it grows and it changes. Non-living things do not eat, cannot reproduce. They don't drink. They don't move. They don't breathe. They don't go to the bathroom, and they don't grow or change. They're just kind of there. So think of that rock or the picture of rocks that we saw. Do they eat, reproduce, drink, move? Someone can move them, but do they move on their own? No. So it's probably a solid example of a non-living thing. But what about trees? Well, trees grow, they change, they reproduce because they send off seeds and everything else, which grow more trees. They drink their roots, they eat, their roots all absorb the nutrients from the soil. So I'd say those are living things. Now, this is an example of what you guys are going to do. I have a video that I want you to watch that kind of summarizes all of this.
Squeaks, it's a great day to be alive. And yes, I'm really living, and so are you. But what does that mean? It sounds like a pretty simple question, right? There are living things all around us, as well as things that are not living. When I was looking around the fort's playground just a minute ago, I saw a rock, which is not a living thing. But the bird that was singing in the tree, that's definitely living, and the tree is too. But sometimes the answer to the question of what's a living thing and what's not can be a little tricky. I can hear a bird sing when I watch a video on a computer or a phone, but of course computers and phones aren't living things, even though they might make sounds exactly like things that are alive. Scientists called biologists study all sorts of living things, so they're the experts on what things are living and what things are not. After studying all kinds of life, they discovered that everything that's alive, or was once alive, has a few things in common. You can think of them kind of as rules that all living things follow. So let's take a look at some of these rules. Rule number 1. Living things need energy. You need energy to play and to do your schoolwork. A plant needs energy to make new leaves and to grow. Even some kinds of germs use energy when they make us sick. Living things get energy in lots of different ways, but they all need it to stay alive. Okay, rule number 2. Living things grow and change. You're bigger than you were when you were a baby, but you're not as big as you will be someday. And just like you, all living things grow and change, whether that means growing up or getting more branches and making new leaves like trees do. All right, rule number 3, living things reproduce. Reproduce means to make more of something. When living things reproduce, they make more of themselves. For animals, that means having babies like kittens and puppies that will grow up to become adult cats and dogs. For plants, that usually means making seeds that can grow into new plants. Rule number 4, living things respond to the world around them. In other words, when something around a living thing changes, that living thing changes too. For example, when you get cold, you might shiver or put on a coat. Both of these things will help you warm up. So that's how you respond to the cold. And in the same way, in autumn, when the days start to get shorter and the weather starts to get cooler, some trees lose their leaves. They are responding to the change of seasons. Great question, Squeaks. What about the leaves that have fallen to the ground? Are they living or non-living? Those leaves on the ground, even the brown dead ones, were part of a living thing, the tree. So biologists say that we still call them living things. Now, it might seem like there's some things missing from the rules, like what about moving? When you think about it, a lot of living things move, but not all of them do. Plants, for example, don't get up and walk around, but they're still alive. And there are things that move that were never alive, like shadows or the hands on a watch. Shadows don't use energy, and watches don't reproduce or grow. So if you're thinking like a biologist, then something has to meet all of the rules in order for it to be considered a living thing. If it doesn't, then it's not alive. Now, are you ready to test what you know about living things? It's game time! I'll name a thing, and you have to decide whether it's alive or not. First up, is an earthworm living or non-living? If you said living, you're right. Earthworms need energy to wriggle through the soil. They also grow, and they lay eggs that hatch into baby earthworms, which means they reproduce. And if you've ever held an earthworm, you know they respond to changes in the world around them. If you pick one up, it tries to wiggle away. All right, next up, is a cloud living or non-living? If you said non-living, you're right. A cloud may look like it grows because it might get bigger, say before it rains, but a cloud doesn't use energy, and it doesn't have baby clouds, so it doesn't reproduce. And since it doesn't follow all the rules, it's not living. Okay, what about this stick? Is it living or not living? If you said living, you're right. This stick is living because it was once part of a tree. And since the tree is a living thing, then the stick can also be called a living thing. So you can use these easy rules to study everything you see around you. Go for a walk outside and take some time to stop and think about what you see. Icicles, acorns, pebbles, and grass, and look at the clues we talked about. Are they alive or not? Thanks for joining us on SciShow Kids. If you have a question for us, ask a grown-up to help you. Leave a comment down below or send us an email to kids@scishow.com. Thanks, and we'll see you next time here at the fort.
Okay, guys, so I think that gave a pretty good description of what is living and not. So go ahead, go explore outside and fill out your chart or take pictures and label them and show me 5 living things and 5 non-living things. I look forward to seeing what you come up with. Have a great Thursday, and I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.